All right, guys, welcome into the Alabama postgame show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. I'm your host, Simone Eli, alongside Ben Flanagan this evening. This one just went final a little bit ago from Oxford as Alabama gets it done against Ole Miss, 30-24. The final, Nick Saban gets the better of Lane Kiffin down the stretch. This was not exactly the most stellar performance from Alabama, but hey, a win is a win, Ben. We were talking about this a moment ago, and it seems like all is well, at least in Nick Saban's book, now that the Tide are back in the win column.
Yeah, happy Nick Saban, happy life for Alabama fans, right? But I mean, look, those watching on CBS, you'd think that they probably enjoyed that slow-mo shot of Lane Kiffin throwing his play sheet. I mean, that's the new Daniel Moore painting, I think, in the eyes of a lot of fans. But yeah, how about Nick Saban showing some emotion there at the end, throwing his hands up as Brian Branch made that final deflection as time expired there, or right before time expired, I guess. Look, you're right. It wasn't pretty, but so few of Alabama's games have been this year. I mean, this is a season of grit. That's a word that Saban used during his press conference after this game. A lot of frustration, sure, but a lot of toughness, a lot of competitive spirit. I mean, they've lost 2 games on the final play this year, but they've also sort of won 2 games with defensive plays essentially as time expired. So, look, they held a really good offense to 7 points in the second half. They got another outstanding game from Bryce Young.
Yeah. Let's talk about the grit and the effort from this team, Ben, because honestly, it's like this Alabama team really could have easily folded after the loss. 2 lost teams are not going to make it into the playoffs. I think we kind of know that the West is a long shot or over. I think it might be. There's no chance for that. But national championship, not contenders. To see this team come back to win a game on the road like this, to know that there's 2 left at home. To me, there are no I know there are a lot of Bama fans that want to see the postseason run, that want to see the national title, but this has to be a good sign when it comes to what's happening in the locker room.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you go back to Alabama's 2 losses, right, they lost both games by a total of 4 points, and they were each on the last play of the game. And those were on Alabama's worst days. And they clawed their way back in. They kept competing. And that's something that Saban has said that he likes about this team, their competitive character, right? How they respond to adversity. And you'd obviously prefer not to put yourself in a situation like that. But I think that if you're an Alabama fan, you should be encouraged that they don't just roll over when things go bad, right? Yeah. And a lot of the credit should obviously go to Bryce Young. I mean, he doesn't do it by himself. I mean, teammates are blocking for him. They're catching his passes. But the dude is just a magician who gives his team a chance to win. I mean, any other quarterback in the country, I don't know how this team even stays in games, to be honest with you. But really, I mean, you have to look at this as a team effort, too, because they got positive contributions from guys like Jace McClellan, Ja'Cory Brooks, Cameron Latu. The offensive line played pretty well. Will Reichard had some big kicks in the game. So, they had to do it without Jahmyr Gibbs, too, who Nick Saban revealed had twisted his ankle earlier in the game. So that was going to be a big challenge. But the defense made plays. Pass rush was really good all night. Great game for Will Anderson, for Brian Branch, Byron Young. I mean, I think despite the sloppiness of the game, this was a really good and competitive team effort all around for Alabama. So I think it's a satisfying win.
Sure. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. For Jason Sasser, his kind words says, thanks, Simone and Ben, for a great postgame show. We are back on track. Alabama certainly is. Guys, Bryce Young goes 21 of 33 for over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Ben, you mentioned that Alabama's getting it done around Bryce Young, but at the end of the day, he is the magician that makes this work. Should he not be the quarterback at Alabama, there is no telling what the record would be right now. I know that he's not going to win the Heisman for a lot of different reasons. At least it's a long shot for it to happen, but what makes this guy special? What makes him so successful when the game is on the line, he's able to do what he does?
I think that you find Alabama on the opposite ends of the composure spectrum this season, right? Where you have a team that commits really horrible, crippling penalties at the worst possible times. And, that's one end of the spectrum, but you've also got the coolest customer in all of college football, maybe sports. I mean, you're talking about Bryce Young, who is historically composed under pressure. I mean, it doesn't matter what the moment is. It doesn't matter what the adversity is in front of him, the mountain he has to climb. He just plays the game. And he, like I said earlier, he's a magician. He can make lemonade out of lemons. We've seen him do it before when Alabama is up against it, whether it's against Texas this year, Texas A&M this year, whether it's against Auburn last year, whether it's a national championship game where he played pretty well in the SEC championship against Georgia last year. It really doesn't matter what the stakes are, who the team is, and it doesn't matter what the score is. Bryce Young just stays cool. He has amazing composure in the pocket. The guy makes plays with his feet. The guy is accurate with his arm. He finds his teammates. He runs for first downs. He's a cerebral guy who just makes good decisions almost all of the time. So it's rare that you see Bryce Young make a bad decision because the guy just stays so cool. I mean, that's what we've been saying for the past couple of years. It's why he won the Heisman last year, and it's why he's still arguably the best quarterback in the nation right now.
No doubt about it. It took a minute for this Alabama offense to get going early into the game. There was a lot of frustration on social media surrounding Bill O'Brien, and there has been in a lot of games this year. Ben, I want your take on how much of this is warranted and what does the future look like for Bob in Tuscaloosa?
Yeah. Look, you know how sometimes you'll hear about how like sports agents, they're going to like leak that their client is a front runner for a certain coaching opening, so they might leverage a new deal somewhere or get another job. That's Alabama fan base, right? The fan base right now. They're not whispering; they're screaming Bill O'Brien's name for any job: the Nebraska job, the Auburn job, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, the San Jose SaberCats. I mean, like, it doesn't matter right now. They just wish him nothing but the best in his pursuit of a head coaching gig anywhere but here, right? But look, I mean, other than it just being an uncharacteristic season across the board for Alabama, their offensive coordinator has been the story of the year. And I mean, you can just look at the numbers. They're down from what they were last year. Obviously, they have fewer weapons than they did. But I mean, I think people just keep going back to the play calling overall. I mean, tonight, the second down play calling was awful. Like, I mean, it put the offense in 1/3 and long situation after another. They had 3 and outs. I mean, you have a delay of game penalty on third down before halftime that nearly cost them a touchdown. You know, you have strange fourth down call that cost them a possession and a chance to score and gave Ole Miss momentum. So, you know, it's just very strange how he manages the game, the plays he chooses to call, the schemes that he draws up for these receivers who a lot of people have complained have been unable to find separation throughout the year. So you have to wonder because, you know, we don't have all the answers in terms of like why Alabama's offense has looked stagnant here and there. But look, Alabama fans don't understand why Nick Saban retained Bill O'Brien after last year. But look, here are the facts too. He engineered an offense last year that had a Heisman Trophy winner.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. He had a 1,000-yard running back. He had 2,000-yard receivers, probably the best offense in the country, one that really came a quarter away from winning a national championships. But what Alabama fans and a lot of people would tell you is, look, we know what we saw. We know what the eye test tells us. Bryce Young and his weapons did a lot of that in spite of maybe Bill O'Brien, which is probably an unfair characterization. But I've often heard this year, what would the guy on the opposite sideline tonight in Lane Kiffin do with this Alabama offense? What would Steve Sarkisian do with this Alabama offense? And look, despite public support from Nick Saban that he has expressed in recent weeks for Bill O'Brien, I don't think that there's any question about it that Alabama is probably long overdue for a change in philosophy and leadership in that role.
So you do think moving forward, I mean, I'm not trying to put it on you, but that there could be a change. I mean, should Alabama, you know, should there not be some sort of conversation, something that happens behind the scenes to make this marriage work, that there could be a change offensive coordinator moving forward?
I would say never say never, right? Sure. You never know, because I was personally surprised that Bill O'Brien stayed on this year, even after last year, because a lot of people, again, despite those numbers that I just mentioned, and despite the fact that Alabama made it to the national championship game and had a Heisman winning quarterback, like I just said, I mean, I think people still were frustrated with how the offense operated, the play calling in crucial situations and critical moments where they needed to convert a first down. They needed to convert third or fourth in short, and they couldn't do it. They didn't have very creative or dynamic play calling strategy. So I don't know. It's possible that he retains him again and they try to make it work. But we've also seen in the past where Alabama's offenses have looked stagnant and there's been a mutual decision to part ways. I mean, you can go back to Doug Nussmeier when he left Alabama, and then they brought in Lane Kiffin right after that because they needed a shot in the arm. They needed to get more dynamic as modern college offenses were evolving. And I think that we're kind of at a similar crossroads right now, but we'll see.
You're speaking to the fans here, Ben. They're enjoying your comments, getting the comments. J.R. Smith says, yes, put it on me. He says, Slayton Rice says, OC with the thumbs down. Alabama does get it done today at Ole Miss, 30-24 the final. And a big part of the success, Ben, you mentioned some defensive guys, was really containing this run game that has been super explosive for Lane Kiffin and the Rebels. They did up almost 200 yards. Quinshon Judkins, the Alabama native from Pike Road High School, did have 2 touchdowns, 135 on the ground. But it seems like when necessary, Alabama was able to come up with stops down the stretch, especially in the second half.
Yeah, we mentioned the pass rush. I mean, it was huge. It was the type of pass rush I think that everybody expected from Alabama. going into this season, and we've seen glimpses of it. I mean, Will Anderson, he hasn't been the Will Anderson of 2021, but he has been an incredibly productive and just, again, dynamic and just absolutely dangerous player on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, you give his stats to anybody else and they would say, man, this guy's a beast, potential All-American. And I think he's been fantastic. Obviously, Dallas Turner on the other side of the line, he's been really good. He made some plays tonight other than that face mask that was obviously critical in the 3rd and 18, and we can talk about that, penalties and stuff like that.
Head off, bro.
Oh man, it was horrible. Thank goodness that guy was okay to come back in the game, let alone survive the play. It was horrible. But Byron Young, Brian Branch there at the very end, but Brian Branch was fantastic throughout the duration of the entire 60 minutes of the game. So Alabama's got players. They've got a roster, right? It's just about can they execute? Can Pete Golden come up with a scheme against these dynamic offenses? Ones like Lane Kiffin runs, ones like Josh Heupel runs. I mean, they're tough to stop. They really are, even if you've got athletes, even if you've got Will Andersons and Henry To'oTo'os and Brian Branches. But they put it together tonight. They had a fantastic game plan. They held a really good offense to 7 points in the second half. So you've got to give credit to the defense tonight. They came through in the second half and gave the team a chance to win.
Yeah, Ben, I want to talk big picture. Left in this season, it's at home against Austin Peay, and then, of course, the Iron Bowl at Bryant-Denny Stadium this year. I want to talk big picture a little bit about the Alabama's program in a totality way, kind of dynasty-wise. What does Alabama need to do moving forward to keep up with the transfer portal, the Tennessees, the Georgias who are getting these guys? And I'm not saying that Alabama's not getting these guys, but you got to hit the transfer portal well. You got to execute when it comes to getting guys in that fits your mold, but also take it to another level. Wide receiver play has obviously dropped off tremendously for Alabama this year, than what we've seen in years past. How concerning is the dynasty? Is the tide turning, so to speak?
Yeah, right. If you listen to everybody, like if you listen to all the noise out there, I guess it's over, just like it was in 2013, just like it was in 2010, just like it was after they lost to Ole Miss in 2015. I mean, the dynasty has died now. Like, it's got 9 lives like a cat at this point, right? So, I mean, sure, it's over. I mean, look, you have NIL, you have the transfer portal, you have the unbelievably competitive nature of just college football recruiting, right? Who do you want navigating that? Do you want a new coach? Do you want to move on from Nick Saban? I don't think so. But I do think that at some point you do talk big picture with Nick Saban in Alabama, because how long has he been here? He's been here since 2007. And so you have all these people murmuring, is this the end? Is the window closing finally for Nick Saban? He's lost a couple of games. But look, I've put it off for most of the season in terms of this conversation, because I think that it's our instinct to say that this is Alabama, this is Nick Saban. They've got so much talent.
Sure.
They've got so much experience. They're going to figure it out, and they're going to right the ship before it sinks. And look, we're talking about a couple of losses. I mean, Alabama probably finishes the season 10-2 with a chance at, 11 wins, a decent bowl game. But do Alabama fans want to relive like 2010, right, when they followed up a national championship season with 3 losses, with all the talent that they had on their roster? Certainly not. But, I mean, think of what the other teams and fan bases would do for a bad season like that. This is rock bottom for Alabama when they have multiple losses, 2 or 3 losses. But, again, the question to me now is this. Like, is this season indicative of bigger problems at Alabama? Is this the first big sign that the window is closing on the Nick Saban era? And, my response to that is just like, look, you can bet against Nick Saban if you want to, but I think if you look back at what's happened before, there's precedent, right?
Yes.
Like after they lost 3 games in 2010, they won 2 straight national championships. They won 5 total. After they lost 2 games in 2019, they won the national championship with a team that many consider the greatest in college football history. So Alabama's still recruiting at an insane clip. Nick Saban has indicated that every turn that he wants to keep coaching, he doesn't want to slow down in the foreseeable future. So, again, considering the precedent that we have with Alabama and how they respond to bad seasons and this type of adversity and what Nick Saban has said about his future, I think everybody should just relax and just remember your head coach is Nick Saban, so all is well.
Yeah, a lot of really, really great points, Ben. That's why I asked your opinion, because I knew that you'd break it down for us in a way that the history backs up. And if there's one thing that I think that we can say for sure is that Nick Saban adapts when necessary. A lot of folks thought there's no way that he'd continue to recruit at the level that he has, that he would continue the dynasty that he has. But the guy is able to adapt. He doesn't have social media. He doesn't have to do all these, little giggles that all these people, coaches, Lane Kiffin, do on social media. The guy gets it done just being who he is, but also adapting to what's necessary to get the players in that's necessary. And then maybe that means having some change up on the staff.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, there's been A lot of staff turnover under Nick Saban. I mean, you just like go all the way back to his first coaching staff and like
Yeah.
who he wanted on the staff, who was on the staff, where they are now. Everybody talks about that 2015 team where you had guys like Lane Kiffin and obviously Kirby Smart and Mel Tucker and these future head coaches, these guys who are successful now as head coaches. And so Saban has been there before, and he'll be there again. And what's just so interesting now at this point today, Alabama was officially eliminated from contention, right? And that's such a weird feeling, isn't it? That Alabama's only missed one college football playoff up to this point, just one until now, until this year. This is their second since they introduced it in 2014. That must be confusing for every other fan base that they won't have to go through Alabama to win a national championship this year. But I doubt you're going to hear from anybody else outside the state complaining about that. But look, the silver lining too is that Alabama fans, they don't have to shell out those thousands of dollars and for tickets and travel and shelter and everything else that comes with postseason success. Going to these games, it like adds up fast.
It does.
So when you've played 13 in the past 13 in the past 8 years. But Alabama fans don't like hearing about that silver lining, but we got to find something.
No doubt about it. Speaking of silver lining, Austin Peay at home next week, and then the Iron Bowl. What is it that the Tide, Nick Saban, is looking to see in these last couple weeks of the regular season before whatever bowl game lies ahead for Bama?
I think just making improvement, right? Like, I mean, we know what Alabama's flaws are this year. Saban certainly knows them. The team knows them, and the team, they're the biggest critics of themselves. Like, I mean, you hear them analyze themselves after every game during the week. It's obviously identified what they need to work on. And I think that they showed, again, the type of grit and determination and competitive character that we've seen all season. But I think that they applied it to the actual in-game scenario where they were facing adversity, where they had to make stops when they needed to. They had to churn the clock out with running when they needed to, even when their top rusher was out of the game. And they executed it in a way with a little more consistency. It wasn't all consistent and it wasn't totally pretty tonight. But again, I think that they took steps tonight, like Nick Saban, I think, said in the post-game presser, in the right direction. I think as long as you're making a step in the right direction, then you're looking at completing the season successfully. Obviously, you want to win a national championship if you're at Alabama. But look, you have 2 losses at this point. You're not going to the SEC championship. And so all you can focus on is winning what's on your schedule. Austin Peay, Auburn, and whatever bowl game they happen to get this year. So just moving in the right direction, one game at a time. And that Austin Peay counts. Alabama, you've only got 3 games left this season, fans. 3 games. The season has flown by. So enjoy it while it lasts.
Enjoy it while it lasts, guys. Alabama gets it done today on the road in Oxford against Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, 30-24. The final next up, Austin Peay. Kickoff set for 11. It's an early one there in Tuscaloosa. And then the Iron Bowl probably will be the 2:30 game on CBS, but we'll see what it typically is. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Alabama Postgame Show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. For Ben Flanagan, I'm Simone Eli. We will see y'all here next week. Have a good night.
Medical Properties Trust, at the very heart of healthcare.